Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 most important things to make the most out of your message. So, my name is Dylan Langford.
I'm Evelyn Novik.
My name is Kishmal Khan.
My name is Enku.
I'm Kwesi.
So the agenda for today, so first off we're going to start with our purpose. We're going to do a quick introduction activity. I'm going to go ahead and teach you about the A method. We're then going to switch over to hooking the audience's attention. Then we're going to switch over how to structure your presentation in an engaging way. We're going to show you some steps to improve recall of the presentation. We're going to show you how to consider your medium to find the most appropriate one for the information. We're going to do a quick wrap up, and then we're going to have a closing activity, and then we're going to answer all your questions that you have. So why is making the most of your message important? So it's important to have a purpose or something that it's a statement or something that you want to prove to your audience, something you want your audience to believe, something you want to show your audience. No matter what it is, every presentation is going to have a purpose. So we're going to do a quick activity. If you open up your foldable, as soon as you open it up, you're going to see a QR code right there. What you can do is you can use your phone and you can scan that. If for some reason you don't know how to use a QR code, we are going to be walking around showing you how to use it if you don't know how to do it. This is going to be an activity just for the group leaders, by the way, y'all. Everybody else, stay tuned. We'll have an activity for everybody else later, but just the group leaders for right now. Go ahead and scan the QR code on there. If you don't know how to do it, let us know and we'll help. Or you can do it from exactly that link right there. It's going to be a quick question. We're going to give you about 2 minutes to do that, y'all. We're going to be walking around, making sure all the group leaders know how to do it. Be a group leader. Yep.
Go ahead and work as a group as well.
Yeah, you're going to work as a group, everybody. It's just the group leader is going to fill out each one individually.
Show me how to use it.
Just open up your camera.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and it should automatically. And it's this first one right here.
You just take a picture?
You just kind of like.
Awesome. Great. Y'all good?
I need help. Usually it works like this. I'm like, I need help.
There it goes.
Okay.
I didn't know that. I guess
Oh, you got it? Can I borrow it?
May I borrow something? Mine didn't work.
There you go.
Oh, dang, okay.
What's your purpose? And so,
Oh, that's awesome.
thank you. Everyone else, good to go? Back here? Everybody? Good? Good? Got it done? Awesome. All right, we're going to go ahead and show up the results.
Is everybody done?
Wait.
We're still waiting for you.
Hold it.
Okay, we're good.
Everybody's good?
Okay, awesome. So we got our 5 responses over here. So we have design your visuals, identifying your intent, take over the world. Kind of meant more geared towards, your actual group presentation. But hey, that's one thing you can do. You can't take over the world, hey, each their own. Analyzing your audience and how to craft your content online. So we have a lot of good purposes, definitely from a range of, from good to bad. But so these are going to be the 5. Evelyn's going to go ahead and write them over here, and we're going to go ahead and try and incorporate all those into each of our individual things that we're going to be telling you about. That way, you each have something you can take home, something that you'll remember from it. All right, and we're going to go ahead and head back to the slideshow. I'm going to go ahead and start talking to you all about the A method. So we have the A method, which we'll show you over here, is going to stand for audience, intent, and message. As soon as it switches over. Hey, that's a little slow sometimes. Just gotta catch up with me. Too fast for it. So we got the A method. The way I have to remember it, because I can aim as a target, so just a little quick memory, refresh kind of it, get in your mind. But what the audience intent message are going to do is it's the way to shape your mission and your vision. What that's going to do is basically make sure that you are communicating with your audience the right idea and that they're perceiving it the right way. So the biggest thing that you're going to start off with is your audience. So the way we all came up with this presentation is we said, okay, there's going to be UTD students and a professor. So we tailored it towards y'all. If I was going to tailor it towards, my grandma and grandpa, I'd probably, have bocce ball and, bingo set up for us. But the thing is, I'm tailoring it towards y'all and towards the classroom. So I'm not going to do that. You got to figure out who your audience is, their demographics. You got to figure out who they are, either as a group, as individual groups, as a whole, and then you need to tailor your presentation towards them so that it's more effectively minded and so that they're understanding it. The next thing you want is your intent. You want to make sure you're intending the message the right way. So if I was up here talking about global warming, I don't want to come up here and say, oh, you know, and go through this whole presentation, talk about this, and then you think that even though I'm talking about how much I support, you know, everything against global warming, y'all think that, you know, I'm Donald Trump and I don't believe it or something like that. You want to make sure that the actual intent and message, they're very interlinked and combined. Your intent and your message are going to be very important into what the audience is perceiving of you. You want to make sure that these are linked and that they are agreeing with each other. Because I can sit up here and tell you about the A method, but if you, at the end of the presentation, all you got from it was that it has something to do with a target and shooting arrows, then I didn't perceive my intent and message the right way. So I want to make sure that I'm using my intent, message, engaging y'all's audience, you know, engaging my audience, looking at y'all, making sure that, okay, you know, I had some nods, you know, y'all aren't gazing off. Okay, good, it looks like y'all are understanding. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you kind of a real life example. One of the greatest speakers right there, Malcolm X. I'll show you a quick video in a second, but just some of the do's and don'ts. The do's real quick, like I said, tailor your presentation toward your audience. You want to detail your presentation, your intent. You want to make sure it has the right effect on your audience. And then your message, keep it clear and concise. Clear and concise. Do not ramble on. Do not go on and on about something that either someone's not caring about, that someone's not understanding, or that someone's not going to, you know, ever remember in the future. They're not going to remember 10 minutes from now. So just to show you a quick summary real quick, or a quick example real quick, I'm going to go ahead and show you this clip from Malcolm X right here. He was telling
If you shop on Amazon, you should use Wikibuy. It's a browser extension that
we don't have YouTube.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or a repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate?
All right, so Malcolm X, I think that quick clip right there is a great example of all the do's I talked about in the A method. So his audience, he obviously knew who he was talking to. He knew how, at the end, he heard all of them clapping. So, I mean, you know that obviously they understood exactly what he was saying, and they agreed with it. He knew who his audience was. He geared it towards them. His intent, he made sure the message was clear for them. He made sure they knew, he made sure that, you know, it was tailored exactly towards them. He made sure they knew exactly what they wanted to hear, and that it would follow along with what his ideas were. And it was clear and concise. That clip was only about a minute long, and yet you could see at the end the amount of uproar that he had from everybody around him talking about, you know, basically just saying how much their approval was for everything that he was saying and going through, and how he can move a crowd. Now, just really quickly, these are pretty simple. I'm just going to say some of the don'ts. Don't be generic. Don't make your presentation like everybody else's. If it's generic, you're going to lose interest. Everybody's going to be at the first, you know, right after I'm done presenting, if this is generic, people would be asleep. You don't want people sleeping during your presentation. Unrelatable. If it had nothing, again, how I kind of go back to that like bingo thing. If I would have geared this presentation towards, you know, middle-aged, you know, women and, you know, middle-aged women, you know, who were, I mean, and, you know, law degrees. That would have absolutely nothing to do with the business school because we have a younger demographic, we have a mixed gender, and then we also have people who are most likely in business degrees, not law degrees. So it wouldn't make sense to approach that audience with it. So, and confusing, another thing is, don't make it longer confusing. Don't talk about a topic more than you need to or ramble on more than you need to, because if someone gets it, it's clear, it's quick, and they get it, that's all you need to do to convince them. Don't talk yourself out of a sale is what I always tell myself. I've been a salesman since I was 16, worked multiple jobs. Once somebody's agreeing with you and once you've got the sale, don't talk yourself out of it. You know what I mean? Yes, it's cool, it's good to build that trust, it's good to build that rapport, but once you've closed it, don't talk yourself out of it. All right, thanks y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Evelyn now. She's gonna talk to you about hooking the audience's attention.
Thanks, Dylan. So, in my opinion, I think hooking the audience's attention is probably the most important thing you need to do. If nobody's paying attention to you, your presentation's essentially worthless. So, I'm going to dive into a few do's and don'ts about how to hook your audience's attention, and I'm going to show you a really cool clip that Bill Gates did at a TED Talk where he does all this in like 1 moment. So the first thing you want to do is you want to begin in a compelling way. And actually, 10 rules for making a good oral presentation says that this is probably one of the most important parts. You want to grasp their attention right at the beginning. You can do this by using a grabber or creating interest by explaining why you personally think the topic is interesting or useful. And also, audiences usually like it when you make things about them. So if you want to try something like talking about the audience's goals, kind of like what we did just now, or what they'll get out of the demonstration, do a benefit statement. You can also play on the audience's emotions to garner attention. And you always want to help the audience resist distractions. And I like this acronym. Our textbook talks about it, Guide to Presentations. I'm just going to write it out over here. So we've got R for relevant. You always want to keep your presentation relevant. E for emotion. S for surprise. And I for include. If you include the audience, they're more likely to pay attention as well. We got another S for senses. You want to engage the audience's senses. And T for tension. Sometimes introducing a little bit of tension can make people pay attention more. Okay, so you want to help your audience resist distractions by keeping things relevant, introducing some emotions, surprising them, including them, stimulating their senses, and adding some tension. So that's a lot to remember. You're probably wondering how you can even fit that all in one presentation. But in this video, I'm going to show you Bill Gates is talking about malaria in poor countries, and he's talking about pretty much what philanthropists can do to eradicate the disease. And he puts in a pretty shocking moment that just completely grasps the audience's attention. So.
Now, ironically, what happened was it was eliminated from all the temperate zones, which is where all the rich countries are. So we can see 1900, it's everywhere. 1945, it's still most places. 1970, the US and most of Europe have gotten rid of it. 1990, you've gotten most of the northern areas. And then more recently, you can see it's just around the equator. And so this leads to the paradox that because the disease is only in the poor countries, it doesn't get much investment. For example, there's more money put into baldness drugs than are put into malaria. Now, baldness it's a terrible thing. And rich men are afflicted. And so that's why that priority has been set. But malaria, even the 1 million deaths a year caused by malaria greatly understate its impact. Over 200 million people at any one time are suffering from it. Means that you can't get the economies in these areas going because it holds things back so much. Now, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here so you could experience this. We'll let those roam around the auditorium a little bit. There. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience.
Alright, so I really like that clip. Let's kind of break down what he did. He definitely kept things relevant to his subject, and he created a lot of humor when he joked about the baldness treatment and about how poor people shouldn't be the only ones to experience malaria. He kept the entire thing relevant. We know mosquitoes carry malaria, so the mosquitoes, I think, were really clever. So he covered that. He definitely evoked emotion from the audience. I think it was kind of half some people thinking it was funny and some people kind of just being shocked. That was definitely a surprise if you look at the audience's faces. I mean, I don't think anybody was expecting him to bring out mosquitoes when we're talking about how deadly they are. And I think that kind of knocks out tension, too. I mean, I personally wouldn't want to be talking about malaria and how dangerous it is and how mosquitoes are the most dangerous animal in the world and then have a He's including the audience by giving them the experience of being in a mosquito-infested environment, and he's engaging their senses by making them more aware of just the environment around them. So that leads us to our last do. You always want to end with emphasis so that the audience will remember what you talked about. And let's see, I think Hishmala is going to come up with a good idea for design your visuals. Ending with emphasis. I think that works with Take Over the World. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen like a speech by Hitler or anything, but he came pretty close to taking over the world, and I would say he ended his speeches with a pretty good amount of emphasis. As for the don'ts, you definitely don't want to avoid engaging with the audience. I know it can be really intimidating, but at the end of the day, everybody just wants you to do well, and engaging the audience really makes them feel like they're a part of what you're talking about and they're more immersed in the experience. And avoiding eye contact. You never want to do that, but when I say like you want to make eye contact with people, I'm not talking about just standing there and like staring at one person in the face the entire time, because I've seen people do that and it's terrifying, quite frankly. So you want to bounce your eyes around the room and you really just want to make everybody in the room feel engaged. And you never want to speak with a monotone voice. So I think we can all attest to having a professor who may speak with a monotone voice. You don't pick up anything they're saying. This has happened to me multiple times. I actually, for some reason, used to be an engineering student, and I had this one physics professor, never changed the pitch in his voice, nothing. I couldn't take away anything from what he was saying. I pretty much accepted halfway through the semester I was gonna have to go home and learn everything on my own. And then I took the final. Of course, most of what was on the final were things he mentioned in class. I failed the class, and long story short, I'm not an engineering major anymore, so it can really affect people when you don't engage your voice and make yourself sound interesting. So now I'm going to hand things off to Kashmala, and she's going to tell us about how we can structure our presentation in an engaging way.
Thank you, Evelyn. So structuring a presentation in an engaging way is really a key to making your presentation a success. If you think about it, when you structure in a way that the audience can stay engaged and actually understand your message, your intent of the message is complete. You have transferred your knowledge to the people who are listening, your audience, and you didn't put them to sleep. They were actually a part of it. So keep in mind that structuring your presentation in an engaging way is maybe not as important as hooking your audience's attention, but it's up there. So I'm going to talk through some do's and don'ts when you are working on your presentation. First, you want to start with your conclusion. Now, I know it's not a norm to start with your conclusion. All through our lives, we were taught that you start with an introduction, you have some body paragraphs, some key points that you're going to cover, and then you're going to end with a conclusion. But that's what makes it so different. You start with your conclusion, you really capture your audience's attention because they're like, okay, this is different. You're starting with a conclusion. So that's one thing that you want to follow next time you're making your presentation. Another thing is you want to support all your learning groups. Now, most people are not just auditory learners. Raise your hand if you know that you're a visual learner. Okay, what if you're a hands-on learner? Is anybody in here just an auditory learner? Exactly. So you want to include activities, videos, just things that can really get everybody's attention so you know that everybody is actually understanding what you're trying to convey to them. And so if I told you that the northern polar ice caps are melting and there's only 60% of it left, you would like understand, like you heard the facts, but tomorrow, maybe 20 minutes from now, you're probably not going to remember what I said. But if I show you this clip from Al Gore, the former Vice President of the United States, who uses visuals and everything to really make you remember and understand the impact that the melting of the ice caps actually has, you're more likely to remember it. So we're going to watch this little clip.
I thought I would start with the logo. What's missing here, of course, is the North Polar ice cap. Greenland remains. 28 years ago, this is what the polar ice cap, the North Polar ice cap looked like at the end of the summer at the fall equinox. This last fall, I went to the Snow and Ice Data Center in Boulder, Colorado, and talked to the researchers here in Monterey at the Naval Postgraduate Laboratory. This is what's happened in the last 28 years. To put it in perspective, 2005 was the previous record. Here's what happened last fall that has really unnerved the researchers. The North Polar Ice Cap is the same size geographically. It doesn't look quite the same size, but it is exactly the same size as the United States minus an area roughly equal to the state of Arizona. The amount that disappeared in 2005 was equivalent to everything east of the Mississippi. The extra amount that disappeared last fall was equivalent to this much. Comes back in the winter, but not as permanent ice, as thin ice, vulnerable. The amount remaining could be completely gone in summer in as little as 5 years. That puts a lot of pressure on Greenland. Already around the Arctic Circle, this is a famous village in Alaska. This is a town in Newfoundland. Antarctica, latest studies from NASA, the amount of moderate to severe snow melting of an area equivalent to the size of California.
So I really enjoyed that just because watching how he compared all of the differences in like how the ice cap looked in 2005 and how it looks now, he compared it to the United States, which we all kind of have an idea of what the United States, the map of it looks. So do you now have a better understanding of what it looks like? Are you more likely to remember that the polar ice caps are, that the northern ice caps are melting and how much is left?
Yeah.
It makes more sense. So that's why including videos, pictures, relating it to something that the audience is more likely to be able to relate to is really important, and it grasps everyone's attention, and it kind of gives them an equal chance to remember the information. And the last do I want to go over is you want to group all your relevant information together. You don't want two topics that make sense when they're put together, put on totally different slides, totally one is said now and the other one is said in 20 minutes. It's not going to make sense. You want to have a coherent flow of your information so when you are listening to it, it makes sense to you so you can kind of key everything together. So it's important to group all your information. So while I hope you do include these 3 do's next time you're making a presentation, I also want you guys to avoid these next 3 don'ts. So you do not want to skip the agenda. The agenda seems like a really minor thing, but it actually gives the audience an idea of what they're going to be taught, what is about to come up in this presentation. So it kind of keys them into the purpose of your presentation without you actually going through the entire presentation, which is slightly important because they will stay engaged and they just are more aware of what's happening. The second thing you want to not do is overcomplicate your message. You don't want to, like Dylan said, you don't want to ramble on. You want to be concise and you want to keep your message short and sweet. So I feel like we've all had professors like this, we've all been in classes like this where one simple idea is taken at least an hour, 45 minutes to just get through. And the idea is lost on you. Like you spent an hour of your life sitting in that class, but you learned nothing. I am kind of a pre-med student, so in the beginning when I was a freshman, I went over to Founders, to the HPAC, it's the Health Professionals Advising Center, and I talked to one of the advisors because everybody said you should go to HPAC and talk to the advisors. And the advisor told me, well, if you want to be a pre-med student, med schools want calculus, but not business calculus like JSON lets you take, they want you to take science calculus. That's what the advisor told me, which isn't true, now I know that, but I didn't know that when I was taking calculus. So I went, signed up for the class, sat in the first day, and now math is not my strongest subject, but the professor spent 1 hour, he was drawing shapes and like different like squiggles on the board, and I wasn't understanding anything, and at the end, it turns out he was just deriving one little equation that I needed to use, but I didn't understand that at that point. So So comes the night before the exam, I'm so confused. This first class didn't make sense, so none of them after that made sense until I sat there and I watched videos and looked up different notes, other professors teaching it, when I understood that that's what he was doing. So he overcomplicated the message by spending at least 45 minutes on one topic that he could have just, if he just wrote a couple numbers on the board, I would have understood. So don't overcomplicate it, just make it easy to understand so you don't lose your audience while you're speaking. And the last don't is don't just lecture. Don't just stand there for as long as you plan on standing here and giving a presentation and just speak to the audience. You want to engage them, you want to ask them questions, maybe show a few videos, use sources that you know will keep them interested in what you're saying. You want them to be a part of it. You don't want them to just feel like they're just sitting and it's just all you. You want to have them be a part of your presentation. So now I'm going to pass it on to Anne, who's going to cover steps to improve recall in a presentation.
Thank you, Kashmata. So before we talking about my topic, so I have a question for you all. Raise your hand if you have trouble remember all the information after presentation. Okay, I feel like most 90% of all of us have that trouble. So that's why today I'm going to present you some kind of technique to help you improve your recall, especially to reinforce your audience. So first, remember, repeat all important information because repetition is the best way to help all the audience focus on what you try to say, right? And then you can use some graph, some chart to visualize the information rather than just using text. I think it's most of us like Kasmala said, most of us is more visualized people, and then we retain all information easily rather than just read all the text through. And lastly, we need to share the meaning before going to the detail. That will help the human brain kind of exercise and then push it into the long-term memory. Besides, we're talking about all the do, I also will give you some tips to avoid some bad things you do on your presentation. First is don't overload your information. Don't cram too much information in one presentation. So remember you use this technique when you try to present your idea. The name is KISS technique. But that is not the regular KISS we think about. Oh. So, what is that for? So that is standing for keep it simple, stupid. Have you guys heard about those KISS technique? Yes. Okay. So I think is we can regulate it with the thing about when lady or guys they're wearing for example lady wearing skirt, right? So you don't want to wear it too short or too long. You want to fit in, right? And same thing with guy. You wearing pants and you want comfortable. You don't want trouble dragging around with long pants or too short to embarrass yourself, right? So that will have you transfer all the information, keep it concise, and don't overload it. And then the next thing is don't do all the thinking for your audience. Like for example, you're attending one lecture math class, for example, and then after all the lecturing, like Kasmana said, don't overcomplicate the message. Your professor all lecture everything, and then after that he said, you understand that? Does that make sense to you at all? Everyone's staring at him like, what are you saying? Because we didn't apply anything, right? So the only thing can make sense if you apply all the information by yourself. That's how you consume, absorb all the information. Last thing is include information with the connection. Oh, wow, there's a lot of things here. So, like we try to understand on the jump information easily, right? But the thing we have trouble is how to connect all the information together, tie all the information back to your topic. That is the main thing you need to help your audience remember it and also correlate it, emphasize it. And to demonstrate what I'm saying, we're gonna show you the video. You know, what is this guy? Okay, he's Martin Luther King, and he present I Have a Dream in 1963. And in this video, I want you to focus on what kind of technique I demonstrated before.
Yeah, those prices are good for today only. There's a lot of flexibility here. We can work something out.
I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
All right, after the videos, so I don't ask you about the content because I know it's a lot of detail about that. But what kind of technique I talk about that he also applied in his speech?
Repetition.
Yes, that's correct. So the repetition. The repetition, I have a make people restore all the information easily rather than just blunder, mumble everything. And then also to wrap up my presentation, I would tell you my story, my failing presentation. So my first failing presentation, when I have that with my teammates, we discuss about what kind of activity we should have for the club. But 5 of us, after I talk a lot, everything purpose and without main point, without emphasize what I want. I look around and they always fall asleep. And I was kind of like, I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention to you guys. I just keep focused on me. And then everyone, they lose exciting about what I'm talking. And then after that, I remember what I need to do is always repeat what I'm saying and then emphasize the main point before talking about the details. Now I'm going to pass it over to Wakasi to talk about the medium for a message.
Thank you. Considering your medium. It's another way to say it is just be